Welcome to part 4 of America, a New Nation. Last time we talked about Thomas Jefferson and those darn pirates. This time we're looking at James Madison. Did he really get us into the War of 1812? What was his legacy and presidency like? And also, what about Dolly Madison, his wife? Did she really save some of our most precious national treasures? We're going to find that out and more. So, grab your pickaxe, put on your miner's helmet. We're going to dig deep for some knowledge today. Hi-ho, hi-ho, we're going to learn, you know. Hi-ho.
Well, let's talk about James Madison. He was known for a lot of different things, and we'll go through each one real quick. First of all, father of the Constitution. That's kind of a big deal. He was also the writer of the Bill of Rights, another kind of big deal. If you remember what started the whole Constitution thing, they came to town with the Virginia Plan. Yeah, he also wrote that. He was Thomas Jefferson's Secretary of State. He supervised the Louisiana Purchase. He also served in the House of Representatives and worked with Jefferson to create the Democratic-Republican Party. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you didn't know, he was also the 4th president taking over after Jefferson served 2 terms. People don't talk much about Madison today, but back then he was kind of a big deal. What was Madison known for as president? Well, if you don't know, you may not be alone. Let's see what a famous boy band from England knows about him in our new series, You Don't Know Your History.
You don't know, you don't know your
History.
Hi, we will direct it.
Okay, One Direction. Wow, thank you for taking time out of your, I'm sure, busy schedules to talk to me. I want to ask you a few things about American history.
Cool, let's give it a go.
Awesome, you sound ready to go.
I have a lot of help actually.
Well, let's see if you need it. Yes or no? James Madison, was he America's first president?
Yeah,
It's definitely.
Oh, sorry. That is not correct.
Where did that come from?
Okay, well, let's get back to the history. Can you tell me exactly when, the War of 1812 started? I just need a year here. The War of 1812, when did it start? Oh, okay, that was a tough question. I understand. Let's go on. Next thing, what do you think the War of 1812 was like?
Loud. Very, very loud.
Okay, I would have to say that's probably true. Anybody else?
And it was all really exciting, so it was amazing.
Well, I'm almost done. Just one more question.
And we are just having an absolutely amazing time, and I think it'd be wrong to look at it thinking, when is this going to end?
Guys, let's not think about that then. Okay, here it is. Last question. If you were living back then, would you fight in the War of 1812? And if so, would you fight for America?
I wouldn't, me personally, I wouldn't. 100%, yeah.
Yeah, no way.
Harry?
Yeah.
Good to know. All right, guys. Thanks for coming in today. That's all I got for you.
It was a no-brainer. We just wanted to see how far we could get in the competition.
Hey, guys. It wasn't a competition, but if it was, yeah, #1 in my book. Well, One Direction at least. Thanks for coming out. And by the way, I think we all know now what you really do know about history.
You don't know your
History.
So One Direction didn't quite measure up. Let's see if we can get you guys a little more informed than Harry and the boys. When Madison took office, the United States was going into an economic boom. The British and French were involved in a world war, and America was profiting from selling to both sides. Napoleon had proclaimed himself Emperor of France and was trying to take control of Europe and eventually the world. Of course, Britain and France didn't want America to be neutral. They wanted America to choose a side. Well, America would choose a side and declare war on Great Britain in an attempt to gain respect from their former king and maybe even take control of Canada. This would be known as the start of the War of 1812. So the War of 1812 isn't talked about much today. Britain was in a world war with France, and the second war with America was kind of a side note. In America, the War of 1812 is known as the easy answer on the test that asks, when did the War of 1812 start? Sorry, One Direction, it was not a trick question. For Canada, the War of 1812 was seen as a defense of the homeland, as most people who fought for the British were Canadian colonists, and many of the battles were Americans invading Canada. America saw Canada as an area that for some reason was left out of the American Revolution. Many Americans thought the Canadians would jump at the chance to join and be a part of the United States. The Canadians, however, saw this as an attack on their homeland and did all they could to defend it. For Native Americans who sided with the British, this was a way to stop America from taking their land and territory. For America, this war wasn't about treasure or territory. It was about gaining respect of Britain. Two notable events during this war was the burning down of Washington, D.C., including the White House, and the Battle of New Orleans. When the British took the capital, they dined in the White House, and then they burned it to the ground. Washington, D.C. would have burned entirely to the ground if Mother Nature hadn't stepped in. After the fires started, they didn't burn long. A thunderstorm came into town, which turned into a tornado that killed several Americans and British troops and forced the British soldiers back to their ships. The occupation of the capital lasted only 26 hours. The War of 1812 ended with the Treaty of Ghent, signed in December of 1814 with no real winner or major concessions from either side. However, while the news of the treaty was still on its way back to America, battles raged. The most influential battle of the war actually happened after it was over. The last major battle occurred on January 8, 1815 in New Orleans, with the Americans commanded by Andrew Jackson, the British intent on taking control of New Orleans and the Louisiana Territory. The British sailed down the Mississippi and made camp at a plantation to wait for reinforcements. When reinforcements arrived, the British attacked, but by then Jackson and his troops were ready. At the end of the battle, the British had 2,042 casualties, and the Americans had 71. Well, the battle was a major lopsided victory for America and made Andrew Jackson a major American hero. The battle had no effect on the war, as the war was already over, but it did lead to Andrew Jackson becoming president several years later. Although there was no clear winner, there was a clear loser, and that was the Native Americans. With the war over and Britain no longer supporting Native Americans against the U.S., they had no way to stop America from taking more and more territory. Finally, the last notable thing to come out of the War of 1812 was the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner. Although it would be many years before it became our anthem, the poem Defense of Fort McHenry was written by Francis Scott Key after witnessing the bombarding of Fort McHenry as a prisoner on a British ship. Well, that was the War of 1812, but we have yet to discuss Dolly and whether or not she saved our most precious treasures. Well, let's take a look with history or just a story. After burning the White House, the following story was told in newspapers the next day. When Washington, D.C. was being invaded by the British, Dolly Madison refused to leave until it was certain she had no other choice. As she was hurrying to get out of the White House, she noticed the portrait of George Washington and was determined to save it. She had the staff take it down and packed it in her coach. She also saved the Declaration of Independence, other documents, and the pet parrot. Well, that sounds like a nice story, but is it history or a story? The verdict is in. It's history. Dolly Madison was a real fighter and not only refused to leave until the last moment possible, at one point she exclaimed that if she were a man, she would place a cannon in the window herself and fight to the death. On the day of the invasion, she actually planned a dinner party, as she was confident the American troops would keep the British out. Well, she was the only one confident because no one else showed up. However, she did save those national treasures that would otherwise have been lost. So what? After watching this video, you should be able to tell someone what were James Madison's major accomplishments, why America started the War of 1812, and what was its outcome and effects. Finally, what Dolly Madison was like and what she did during the War of 1812. So that's it for this unit. Stay tuned for our next unit on Manifest Destiny, America Goes West.